Okay, this is the final part of our day today, and I think the one that is going to be juicy, interesting. We're going to throw some, what's the word? Not sticks at each other, I don't know, verbal assaults. We're having a debate, and the debate topic is there a future for non-alcoholic spirits? So I'd like to invite the adjudicator, Sam Bygrave, up. Sam is an award-winning Australian drinks journalist, probably best in the biz, only because I retired. And he runs Boothby. Yeah, so we've got Sam here who's going to keep these guys in line. On the negative, we have Charlie Lehmann and Cara Devine. If you guys want to also pop up. So Cara is a Melbourne from Bomba. She also runs an amazing YouTube, and she's got a book coming out, so everyone get ready for that. And Charlie is our Sydney cider from Ramblin Rascal and Double Deuce. Okay, our affirmative team. Yes, sit down. We have Matt Jones from Four Pillars, who's going to come and talk to us all about, obviously their gin, but the non-alc that they're producing. And he's followed by Rachael Niall, who is from Perth, and she's running a non-alc booze shop and bar. So we've got a really great panel. I'm going to leave them to it now, so play nice. And we'll all get to decide at the end what we think, who was the winner.
Okay, so this is on? Okay, great. Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to get straight into this in just a moment. I think we're kicking off today with the affirmative with Matt Jones from Four Pillars. So you want to take it away, Matt? You get 5 minutes. I think you're up here.
Wow, this is very formal.
Yeah,
very fast,
no.
Wow.
So there's up here, and then you've got 5 minutes. I'll give you a 30-second kind of warning.
We have studiously avoided having human contact with the opponents. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt from Four Pillars. I'm normally accused at Four Pillars of being the person who overthinks things. We're debating non-alc in a booze convention. We've already overthought it a little bit. But look, is there a future for non-alcoholic spirits? I thought the starting point is actually a slightly different question. Is there a future for non-alcoholic drinks? And thinking about drinks, for me, and I'm a father of 2 kids, and my relationship with alcohol has evolved over 10 years of Four Pillars. I probably drink better but drink less these days. I think it's really important when we think about drinks, we think about it in the context of bars, of socializing, of hospitality, of food and drink. And when we do that, I think in 2023 we have to agree that we need to decouple the automatic assumption that hospitality, that enjoying spending time with friends, that eating and drinking has to involve alcohol. And I think we can give a lot of credit. I saw Andy Normal from Heaps Normal last week. Alcohol-free drinking has been normalized thanks to Heaps. But the question here is not about beer. It's about spirits and it's about cocktails. And when we think about what makes a great cocktail, it's flavor, but it's also story. It's ritual. It's the technique that goes into making a great drink, which everyone in this room knows more about than me. And when I think about story and ritual, there's no better drink than the Negroni. I remember my first Negroni. I had it in milk and honey in London. I thought it was disgusting. I was clearly a child. My wife was the grown-up. She was drinking Blood and Sands and Negronis, and I was on stuff that was far sweeter. But I still remember where I drank it. I still remember that sense of ritual and occasion at Milk and Honey, and a bar that really changed my relationship with cocktails. And so even if I'm not drinking, I don't want a fucking mocktail. I do not want brightly coloured lolly water. I do not want to know necessarily how plant-based it is. I want a Negroni. And even if I'm not drinking alcohol, I want a Negroni. And that's really the rationale. I'm not here to sell you why Four Pillars made Bandwagon, but the fundamental thinking behind it was, can we do something to replicate the flavour and the role of gin in something that might look like a Negroni and give me some of that satisfaction of flavour, story and ritual of stirring my Negroni or having a Negroni made for me. And when we think about that, it's juniper dominance, it's botanical and citrus flavours, it's palate weight, it's some of that sweetness and heat that we get from alcohol. So that's what we've worked hard to try and get into that spirit. So that's Bandwagon. But that doesn't answer the question. I think that starts to answer the question, is there a future for non-alcoholic drinking? I'm pretty sure we'd all agree that there is. But the question on the table is there a future for non-alcoholic spirits? And I think the answer is maybe. And maybe it depends on who's making the drink. Maybe that we've done certain things with Bandwagon. I think there's some other great examples where we've done a lot of the flavour hard work for you. Not everyone is going to be able to figure out how to replicate what the gin made, what the gin did to the Negroni, but perhaps we can do some of that. I think also having a great spirit gives you some story to your drink. I think story is important. I think it gives you some ritual, that feeling of the heft of a bottle in your hand at home when you go, I don't want to drink tonight, but I want to make myself a drink. I want to make myself a not gin and tonic. I want to make something. I want to feel that I measured out something. But I think what we need to acknowledge is perhaps the world's best bartenders can do without a great non-alcoholic spirit. Perhaps it's possible that they can construct flavour in their own special, unique and talented ways. But I think if we're going to normalise the act of enjoying a great drink at home without resorting to alcohol every time, then I think, yes, there is a future for non-alcoholic spirits.
Cool. Give him a round of applause. Thank you. Some very smart and insightful things from Matt. Cara, I believe, is kicking things off for the negative. Please have at it. I'm going to give you a little chime for 30 seconds to go from your 5 minutes.
You might have to talk from here. Okay. Oh, you're good.
Okay. All right, awesome. Hi, guys. Thank you very much for having me, and I really do welcome this chance to have a critical look at an ever-growing sector of our industry, whose growth, has definitely been outlined, or is definitely going to be outlined by my colleague, Mr. Lehmann here. At the end of the day, I thought he was going first. Anyway, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone in this room, would criticize at all any kind of move towards mindful drinking, whether that means reducing your intake or cutting it out entirely. But whether or not non-alcoholic substitutes for the real thing should be considered the main way for going about it definitely needs scrutinized. One of the main arguments for non-alcoholic spirits, as outlined by my colleague over here, is that they're kind of inclusive. But this actually doesn't always ring true for everybody, especially those actually struggling with things like substance abuse. According to the Alcohol and Drug Foundation, exposure to drinking cues and drinking settings has been found to be a strong predictor of relapse amongst abstaining drinkers. Most products have a near identical taste, smell, and appearance to alcohol, so they can be potential triggers. So there has to be some middle ground between a soft drink and then something which is entirely mimicking a substance which they're actively trying to avoid. There's also some concerns about these products being a gateway for drinking to children. There's currently no legislation in place which restricts the sale of non-alcoholic products which mimic alcohol to minors. So obviously they're in places like supermarkets and things like that. While I have no doubt that everyone in this room, whether producers deciding on marketing strategies or those of us serving the liquid, would obviously uphold an ethical standard, can we be sure of the same from everyone in the industry when it is proving to be such a lucrative sector? Now, I absolutely understand the need for grown-up, non-alcoholic alternatives because ordering a Shirley Temple would probably get you a few Snickers from your friends. But bartending has moved on so far from the days of chucking just some orange juice and some grenadine in a glass as a mocktail. In fact, I would argue that constructing a well-balanced and sophisticated non-alcoholic drink without leaning on spirits replacements should be a source of pride for bartenders. At forward-thinking bars like Par, Birdie, Bouvardia here in Melbourne, the non-alcoholic drinks actually read and taste just as good, if not better, than the alcoholic offerings, and they tend to rely more on things like teas, shrubs, artisanal sodas, and just clever techniques. Nick Tazar and Sean Burns' All Day Cocktails is a really good resource for anyone that's actually looking to level up their alcoholic list or non-alcoholic list. And this way, we can ensure that these drinks remain seasonal, sustainable, and also help reduce waste in your bar, because you can cross-utilize ingredients across both alcoholic and non-alcoholic cocktails. Relying on ingenuity and technique over imitations is also beneficial to the bottom line, which obviously is something that we do have to take into consideration as much as we love to have these lofty ambitions. While I fully accept that non-alcoholic products incur a lot of the same costs as their alcoholic counterparts, obviously bar the tax, but things like raw material, production, packaging, transport, and definitely marketing, the fact remains that the average consumer does not think that a non-alcoholic drink should taste the same as an alcoholic one. Whether or not this perception is going to shift in time remains to be seen. Perhaps cost-cutting can happen on the production end of things with advances in technology. But for now, I do feel that it means either risking guests feeling ripped off or taking a hit on your cogs. The non-alcoholic movement is clearly not going anywhere, which is a good thing, but we should be making sure that it develops in an ethical, thoughtful, and sustainable way which benefits consumers, venues, and retailers alike, and that we do not allow it to become dominated by overpriced and well-marketed imitators. Thank you.
Guys, so just really quickly, I just got to interrupt because we forgot to do something at the beginning, which now could be interesting because you've heard two opening statements. We were going to ask everyone to scan this and check and to tell us what they think before the debate. I appreciate you might be a little biased now, depending on whether you prefer Matt or Cara's argument. But we're still going to go through the exercise. So if everyone would mind to scan this on their phone if you can, and then just let us know what your preconception or mid-conception now is.
I think I'm voting for Cara.
Oh, really? And then at the end, we'll then ask again. Sorry, guys.
And before we get to that, after we have the opening statements, there's time for questions. I'm going to ask them some questions, but I'd love to hear from the room as well. Get engaged. So when they're talking, think about things that they, you want to hit them up about. Why are they saying these things? That would be amazing to have. Okay. Has everyone scanned the thing? Put their thoughts into the digital realm. Next up, we have from Tomorrow on Tap over in WA, Rachael Niall.
Hello. So non-alcoholic drinks are about freedom of choice and they're about freedom to play. And that's why non-alcoholic spirits are here to stay. All of you in the modern world, we're all about convenience and we're about choice. When we're talking about food and drinks, you might like classic Coca-Cola. The person sitting next to you might prefer sugar-free Coke. You can have vegan cheese. You can have traditional cheese. I really like traditional pork bacon. You might like fakin' bacon. You might choose traditional wine or you might prefer natural wine, whatever that really means these days. My friend Matt here, yesterday might have had a 0% gin, but he can also have a 42% gin, all from the Four Pillars brand. And he can do that because he has choice. We all demand freedom of choice. Most people at my bottle shop, so about 70% of people at my bottle shop, they love booze. They are like most of us. They're just looking for some alternatives. They're not anti-alcohol. They love alcohol. And they love those pleasure boxes to be ticked. So ritual, flavour and story, as Matt was talking about. I enjoy having non-alcoholic beverages. I think it's just about, again, it's about options. I want to be able to go out and drink a delicious adult beverage, not a fucking mocktail, that is delicious, but it will leave me with clarity and awareness. I like to have that choice. I also like the choice of going out for a quiet drink and coming home 8 hours later and waking up the next morning with a thumping headache, wondering, have I lost my mobile phone? Did I leave it in Uber again? Because I like the choice. I like the option. And that's what non-alcoholic spirits are about. The other thing that's great, my point number 2, is the freedom to play with non-alcoholic spirits. There's who is it? So Will was talking about the excise and the tax and how outrageous it is. Non-alcoholic drinks, not such an issue, is it? So there's more freedom to play. There's less restriction. When it comes to labelling, you can have, I'm going to go backwards a little bit. Let's pretend that I can give you a Negroni that gives you superpowers. I'm pretty sure Sam, or some of you, have drunk enough Negronis to believe that you have superpowers. But it's just a hunch. But this is happening right now. You can have a Negroni, you can have a non-alcoholic drink that enhances your cognitive abilities instead of impairing them. It is happening now. As a sommelier, I'm used to dealing with Shiraz and Chenin Blanc and Pinot Noir. Now I'm dealing in Shazandra, Ashwagandha, chamomile, poppy extract. Not the one in Melbourne bars. You can play. You have the freedom to play. You can choose your own adventure and you can build a drink for your customer that enhances their mood It is not only about the flavour. That enhances their mood and enhances their cognitive abilities, but leaves them feeling fresh the next day. Also, when it comes to marketing, there's no way that you could have a Navy strength gin and market it as being performance enhancing. However, if you're talking about a non-alcoholic drink where you're using nootropics and adaptogens, it's a whole new story. You can market that as a functional drink. We're right on the cusp of this, and it is happening, and you can be a part of it. Non-alcoholic spirits, they offer freedom of choice and freedom to play.
That was very well done. Very well done. For the negative again, Mr. Charlie Lehmann from Ramblin Rascal. Please take it away.
Obviously, I've dressed to win. Been to a few court cases in my lifetime. Ready to roll. Good morning, Melbourne. Thanks for having me. I'm from Sydney, obviously. Mr. Speaker, the question has been posed. Is there a future in the non-alcoholic sector? And I say to this, there is a future, but at what cost? It's hard to argue in a consumer capitalist society that the non-alcoholic sector doesn't have a future. The laws of supply and demand will dictate what products come and go, and currently the non-alcoholic sector is set to grow 3.9% between 2023 and 2027. This will generate $21 billion in the sector alone. But at what cost? The greatest threat to human civilization today is climate change. One of the, if not the biggest drivers, is the burning of fossil fuels. The creation of a luxury product, which makes up the non-alcoholic sector, is set to compound the issue by unnecessarily introducing yet more products to a glutted supply chain. The added introduction to the non-alcoholic sector 8 years ago added a volume of 4.71 billion litres to the drinks industry. With the average volume per person in Australia in the non-alcoholic drink sector market making up 178.60 litres per person by the end of 2023. From the facilitation of ingredients as far away as Macedonia, Sri Lanka, to the distillation, brewing, fermentation, bottling, corking, packaging, the creation, production and delivery of the packaging, and then the distribution into market. Sorry, this is on my phone, it's really small. All these aspects contribute to the ever-growing and very real threat of climate change. At each step of this process, we are adding to an already large carbon footprint and an already ecologically stressed planet. Carbon emissions from supply chains around the world generate 60% of carbon emissions to fossil fuels, to climate change. I ask again, at what cost? What are we willing to pay in order to have a non-alcoholic beer or beverage? A luxury that is, as some would say, is overpriced, comparable to the pricing of actual alcoholic beverages. Surely there's a cheaper and smarter alternative. National and multinational companies have set out to legitimise and profit from the non-alcoholic sector by employing language that is set to infantilise the consumer. Marketing is devised that overstates the needs and wants of the consumer for alternatives that are nicely packaged and well produced. We are duped into buying a luxury product that is We're duped into buying a luxury product that has overemphasised its position within our industry. Whether it be a product that is best described as distilled flavoured water or brewed beers with no booze, kombucha or seltzer, if you will. The purposeful language of these companies used to employ such as like non-alcoholic spirit, distillation of botanicals, brewed beer, adult drinking option, mindful drinking of sophisticated people. These are all used to reinforce the idea that a non-alcoholic product is comparable to alcoholic products, justifying the comparative prices between the two. If we take a look at 4 major brands on the market, brand number 1, $50 per 700 millilitres. Compare that to a bottle of gin on the market of the same production price, $78. Brand number 2, $84 for two 700ml. Brand number 3, $64.95 per case versus $56 per case of an alcoholic beer. Brand number 4, $49.95 per 700ml versus $48 for a comparable bottle of vodka. Ratcheting up profits feeds the company bottom line, and in a consumer capitalist society, I know, this in turn drives the market to develop yet more products, adding to the ever-growing environmental cost. All this for the privilege of savouring very well thought out mocktails mixed exceptional products which are priced to the point of lunacy and with the wool cleverly pulled over your eyes. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for our guys here, our folks here. Well, that was interesting. I'm pretty sure. I think if I've got a question, I'm going to ask you guys for some questions in a second, but I think the first one, I think both sides have raised this around the non-alcoholic stuff, is the story, right? Oh, let's do that. Is a question for you guys. Sometimes with the story and the marketing of it, is that the point with these things? Because sometimes the liquid doesn't stand up to what it should do on the lips?
I mean, that's a very big question to ask about marketing. I mean, everyone's got a different philosophy. One of the things that attracted me to getting involved in Four Pillars was that I've always believed that gin is a fundamentally differentiated spirit. There is so much potential, and Charlie's right. Like, you know, the majority of juniper that we use at Four Pillars comes from Macedonia and Kosovo.
Say your name.
But it's true. And do you know why? Because the world's best juniper comes from there, and we would be wasting our time and everyone's time if we weren't making the best gin that we can. Where the best gin in the world can be made with great botanicals from here, that's the first thing we'll choose. I was attracted to Four Pillars and gin because even though we could make a differentiated gin, and I take no credit, Cameron McKenzie is one of the world's best. He is the current reigning Master Distiller of the Year. He's an extraordinary gin maker. But even after that, marketing has a job to do. We've got to make sure as marketers, as storytellers, as bartenders, we've got to make sure that the quality of spirits gets the credit it deserves. If we don't, then the big guys win. The big guys with generic products and deep marketing budgets and pockets. So yes, marketing has a role to play. Just because marketing is good doesn't make the product generic. Sometimes the marketing is simply trying to do justice to the craft. But I do agree with the basic premise of the point. There is plenty of undifferentiated, flavourless liquid out there that is all marketing surface and nothing beneath the depth.
I'm interested. Does anyone have a question at the moment? Come on. No? Okay. I'm interested. What was the thinking when you guys were coming up with the bandwagon? Because, like, was there a danger that was going to make the flagship brand look bad?
Probably 50% of Four Pillars employees thought it did that. I think the first thing you got to do and this is about any innovation, who you're making it for. And we only made bandwagon because we were convinced of two things. One, Four Pillars customers wanted an alcohol-free option. We did not make it to go after other people. It didn't come from a place of greed about going, oh, look, there's the people not drinking gin. Let's go after the not gin drinkers. Instead, we said, well, look, are people like us, myself included, sometimes looking for an alcohol-free gin-like option? The second question then had to be, can we make a superior product to what's out there? So for us, the two yeses were, yes, it's for our existing customers, and yes, we think we can do better. Had either of those been no, there was no chance we'd have gone into that category. And
just on the name, was it bandwagon because you guys were jumping on the bandwagon, or the punters are jumping on the bandwagon?
A little bit of everything. It was a deliberate tongue in cheek for conversations like this to say we recognise it's a bandwagon, right? Like, and you know, and there's a little slogan on the cap of the bottle that, you know, now you can get on it even when you're not drinking. It was that notion of this is a bandwagon that should be available to all of us, and there are, you know, days, weeks, months, maybe even years when you go, I just want to jump on the non-alc bandwagon. I want to be able to get off again at some stage. But yeah, it was a playful nod to the fact that this is a part-time, not the main gig for Four Pillars, but you know, we reckon we can do okay with it.
For the negative, there's more and more research comes out every month about the dangers of alcohol. As someone who's, you know, has their job in this world, it kind of concerns me a little bit. But I mean, we might be at a point where it's coming to be in the way that tobacco was, right? You're going to have more and more warnings, and then there's going to be more and more evidence saying this is not good for you, even a little bit. Should you guys not be embracing these non-alc spirits and taking it further?
Yeah. Is this on? Yeah. I mean, and I think that's kind of the point that I spoke to in the opening statement, which is that there should be non-alcoholic alternatives. This team is not denying that in the slightest. It's whether or not using a replica or like a dupe for the real thing is the way to go about it. We as bartenders, should be masters of our craft. We're flavor people. We're, trying and pull together your tannins and the texture and all of that. And it almost feels like just a bit lazy to be relying on non-alcoholic spirits as your only sort of alternative, rather than it being more about, really thinking about what we drink and why, and making sure the drink is very appropriate to the time and place and venue or that kind of thing. So it's definitely, as negative as we are, we're not saying that there is not a space for non-alcoholics. I mean, I'm all for that. It's just...
Would you be happy if it was like, say botanical tonic water rather than a spirit that pretends to be gin, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's almost trying to push away from the laziness of relying on categories that already exist and trying to encourage innovation and actually a different way of looking at the entire category.
Just to follow on with what Cara said, these categories, the idea of a spirit is originally to raise spirits up. Now, does a water mixed with juniper do that? No. So they're taking these words and utilizing them to direct market, to sort of infantilize you as a consumer into like, no, you need this because, if you don't, you're not sophisticated. Question.
Can I say, on an interesting point on that topic, what if we use in Europe, they introduce kids to drinking red wine at a younger age? Get them used to words in Australia.
Have you met an Australian?
Australia, we're known for binge drinking, right? So it's like,
Correct.
Instead of getting the kids on the red lemonades, let's get them on a non-alcoholic Negroni.
I completely agree with you, not with the execution. The education...
I don't know if the solution is to get young people drinking booze. Yeah.
No, I do believe... In a very misguided way, we do need to educate young people and how to approach drinking and to take responsibility for their actions. The biggest thing in Australia, no one takes responsibility for their actions.
Well, perhaps these non-alc things can be that gateway, for want of a better word.
The issue that I see is that the labeling of it is like an alternative, and they're using spirit where it's not a spirit.
Rachel?
There is no spirit.
Yeah, I've thought about this topic so much, especially, given that I'm selling 100% non-alcoholic products, I've kind of thought about that whole gateway kind of feeling. And I was even thinking like, okay, with my messaging, with my website and whatnot, do I put a disclaimer on there about it being for my products are for people who are 18 plus? And I do stick to that because, yes, we are trying to replicate alcohol with non-alcoholic. I don't think anyone's denying that. But it is an adult drink, and it's
so you'll ask for ID at the shop if people want to come in and buy your stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you had to do that?
Not yet. Okay. No, not yet. But the other thing is also
probably not what the underage kids are looking for, to be honest.
No, I don't think so. But also, I guess with, Cara was kind of mentioning people might have substance abuse issues and whatnot, and that's something I thought about as well. Well, if someone comes into my store, what? That's not my responsibility. It's not. I'm aware of it, and if I feel like someone, is opening up to me and there is some sort of issue, maybe I'll sort of refer them to, someone. But it's same as cigarettes. Like anyone can just go and buy a pack of cigarettes, whether it's their first cigarette or whether they're just, whether they smoke 20 a day or whether they've just given up, they still have that choice. And it's, I want to stop there.
Okay.
But we don't get the candy cigarettes anymore,
Well,
which
yeah.
was the ultimate gateway.
Well, they were in the,
Now we have vapes.
I do remember those. Do we have a question?
Yeah, I have a
Jane?
question for myself, for you guys, sorry, but from me as MC. I would love to ask this to Matt because I think there's a difference between like non-alcs that are made in a way that still uses distillation, right? And non-alcs that are made like cordial water. And I was just wondering, if you could talk a little bit about that because I think that's a really big difference to what we experience.
Look, I can do my best. I wish Cameron was here, a little bit like Will earlier. I can't speak for other non-alcs. I know that Four Pillars made 2 non-alcs. Effectively, it's the same gin twice, or the same non-alcoholic spirit that's not a spirit twice. One is modelled on the rare dry, and it uses the identical botanicals. Instead of distillation, they're individually steamed, and then we're trying to substitute for other things. So we use some naturally occurring fructose to try and substitute for palate weight. We use Sichuan pepper to try and substitute for some of that alcohol heat. So effectively, we are trying to do our best to replicate the sensation as well as the flavour of rare dry. I love the bloody bandwagon product. So the product you're drinking there is a rare dry bandwagon and tonic. I love the bloody because we've actually been able to use the same Shiraz juice, unfermented, no alcohol, that goes into my Shiraz gin. Effectively, it is quite a straight alcohol-free sort of version of Blaze Shiraz. So yes, they're crafted products, they're botanical products. I can't speak for how others are made, but I totally respect a lot of what the guys are saying about the extent to which some of them could be a marketing facade over a product that doesn't have necessarily much integrity, or maybe doesn't have much cost involved, much craft involved. The one thing I did want to add, though, there is that it's always really important to interrogate purpose, not in too much of a higher purpose, why are we all here, but that sense of what is a spirit, what is an ingredient for? And it exists to go into a drink. And what does that serve? Well, if you're at home, it serves a social occasion, hopefully one where you're in control. If you're in a bar, it actually serves a hospitality experience. And I do think we need to help people choose hospitality experiences that put money in the tills of great venues. And if that means anchoring to luxury cues and luxury brands and drinks that people understand, we're going to move people towards a more adult relationship where they spend more, and then we can run more profitable venues. Whereas if every single person who's driving and not drinking is simply saying, I'm fine, I'll just have Melbourne's finest tap water, then we're leaving money on the table. If when someone who's not drinking just drinks sparkling water through dinner rather than getting a bottle of non-alcoholic wine, we're leaving money on the table. So I do think there is a role for crafted products, not just for the producers, but actually for the viability of the hospo industry as well.
I think we've got a question up the back here.
Thanks, guys. This is a question for the negative, Cara specifically, around talking about but it's bartenders that need to fill the gap here and produce great non-alcoholic drinks in the bar rather than using an alternative. Given that we're in a space at the moment where there's huge skills shortages in bars and restaurants, hospitality in general, and there's over 30,000 licensed venues in Australia, and only a very small portion of those have skilled bartenders to produce great non-alc drinks. What are the rest of us meant to do in those venues to get money in the till, as Matt's saying?
Buy the homegrown spritzers.
Hey, correct answer.
That's a softball.
Shut the doors.
Okay, next question.
Is that a Dorothy Dixer?
Do you have some more on that?
I mean, I think, that's completely fair. And it is often something that I've felt at these symposiums, which are so awesome. But we do need to recognise that we do deal at the tippity top of sort of hospitality and education and that kind of thing. And I think, just actually trying to do as much as we can to bring, a lot of those online sort of classes and things that happened during lockdown. I would love if a lot of brands kept those going and concentrated more on, how to actually build cocktails and flavour and things like that, rather than necessarily being sort of brand led. I guess more like agnostic teaching to try and to make it so that people that are maybe not in urban centres and things still have access to that kind of level of training. But also, like, the best lemon lime bitters that you'll ever get is in a country pub, and if that's not the best mocktail that's ever existed, I don't know.
Australia invented the lemon lime bitters, and if you can't make that, you should find another job.
I think we have another question in the middle.
Hey, yeah, I feel like I sit between the two arguments here, but definitely agree with the disagree, if that to some extent. But just returning to that conversation about categories, because I make a non-alcoholic drink that doesn't really fit into a category. I'm sort of curious about that being one of the biggest challenges. If it's not an identifiable replica, how do we reach people? And specifically in a bar setting, what role does the industry play in sort of being open to the uncategorizable drink?
I think this is a problem with the companies. They're the ones that introduced the categorization. Mocktails have always existed. You, the bartender, should be profiting off this. You should be going to your bar managers and saying, hey, I've got a mocktail list. You don't have to necessarily use non-alcoholic beverages. You use the waste in your bar. And that's you making the money for the bar, you getting a promotion. Instead of like going, sorry, was it something?
Well, no, I'm not a bartender. I produce a non-alcoholic drink, so maybe it is my fault.
No, that's not. If you don't, not categorizing is perfect. You coming out honestly.
But that's what I'm hearing from a lot of bartenders is, what is it? I need to know, is it a mocktail? Is it a beer? Is it a wine? Is it a kombucha? I'm like, well, it's none of those, so... What do I?
Rachel, you got something?
Perfect.
Yeah, sure. I think that's ideal, and I think education does need to be done, but I think we're now at the start of it, and if you're in the right place, which you will be because you've got a great product, Tina. But also, I think people are understanding, like, once you've got that platform and you've got a great non-alcoholics list, whether it's a retail store or whether it's in a wine bar or whatnot, then I think the moment that people are in that, they realise, okay, that you don't have to have an alcohol replica. It doesn't have to be an alcoholic substitute. I think once people start to see that, then it kind of opens up their mind and they realise, again, like I was touching on before, that nootropics and adaptogens, but also, like using like the sustainability and whatnot, using offcuts from your kitchen, all these different things. And I think people really, having their mind open as to what a beverage is or what a non-alcoholic beverage is. And it's coming, and it'll take education, but it's there.
I think I've seen a few menus recently that just have like non-alcoholic, so it doesn't say non-alcoholic cocktails or it's just non-alcoholic, and then we'll have, and actually some of them have had Tina on there, so you're almost like I think hopefully bartenders, like, that sucks that you're getting that feedback, but hopefully bartenders will start to, I think it's
an opportunity though. I'm not trying to be too negative.
Hopefully they start to be like a bit more holistic about it, where it's just like, here's your non-alcoholic options, and you have everything from your tea and coffee to like a non-alcoholic beer or whatever you want to stock in that same section, rather than trying to kind of break it up into your more traditional drinking categories.
And just to build, for anyone who's sort of trying to build a drinks brand, whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic, two quick observations. One, I love what Charlie's saying about the big guys, and I think anyone in the Australian booze industry, let's make the most of the fact that what they're doing is building categories, and we can then articulate where we sit within those categories. Four Pillars is one of the more significant players in Australian gin, but we still can't make the weather in gin. If people decide tomorrow they no longer want to drink gin and they want to shift to tequila and margaritas, then we alone cannot move the tide. But what we can do is articulate what Four Pillars stands for within gin. So I think the first thing is that real discipline, let others establish the category and articulate where you sit within it. The interesting challenge is when you're creating a new category. And to me, the gold standard here is the work that Aperol have done. A lot of Aperol's success is based on the discipline to talk about a single serve. Versatility can be your enemy. It can be so tempting to say, look at all the thousands of drinks that we can make with this, versus say, this is the one. Because then you can start to work with bars, you can start to work with venues, you can talk about a signature serve. You can trust that great bartenders will then come up with their own creative variations, just like we saw with the Grain Shake competition. But as a brand, really being single-minded, I think, is more important than showcasing uber versatility.
Okay. I think we might now get into the rebuttals and dial the invective up again. That was getting really too, like, everyone's on the same page. Felt like a rebuttal. All right, well, so for the affirmative, we have Matt delivering the rebuttal. If you want to take it away. Got 5 minutes
Look,
for that.
I loved everything that the guys said. I thought Cara made some really good points about responsibility. I think the category we're talking about here is an adult category. I think we're talking about people who generally are alcohol consumers who want an option. So for me, I'm not really qualified or interested in talking about non-alcohol drinking non-adults. I think those are separate conversations. I do think we need to lean into the fact that very few people have the ability levels to make and craft flavour without alcohol in the way that some people in this room and Charlie and Cara do. So I think we need to cater to them. I think we need to find ways to add value to venues, and I think building premium brands that deal with a non-alcohol consumer's status anxiety. Is there something I can order that makes me feel part of the social occasion and has some prestige? We need to give them that. And if we do that right and we build brands right, we will help the venues. I think Charlie's point on climate change is critical, but I think it's universal. I don't think any of us be settling for being not sustainable, not responsible. We should be trying to lower our carbon footprints of everything we make and everything we consume. I don't think that's exclusive to the alcohol-free category. And on the cheapness point, look, it's a fair call. And I can't speak for any other producer. I know that if we go to a local bottle shop here, we'll see that Four Pillars Bloody Shiraz Gin is recommended retail $88 and maybe on promo down to about $84, and Four Pillars Bloody Bandwagon is $50 recommended retail, maybe on promo down to $45. So effectively, they're the same price, remove the excise. So I think we've got it broadly about right. But yeah, point taken. It's a good point.
Okay, and the rebuttal for the negative, Charlie Lehmann.
Thank you. I think the whole idea of drinking better is being normalised from a corporate point of view. The idea of a mocktail and normalising non-drinking, we do that in bars every day. If someone comes in, they don't want to drink, I'm more than happy to facilitate for you anything that you want. Again, with that, it doesn't have to be lolly water. I employ really exceptional staff, and I know not everyone can. Like we said before, we're in a tight spot in Australia at the moment with bartenders, but mocktails are the bare minimum. I think if you're hiring people in a bar, you should be able to bang together a pretty good mocktail, especially a lemon lime bitters, which Australians invented, which is a bit of slight to you guys. If you're a bartender, I'd take offense. We can access most of the products and flavors that non-alcoholic sector does as well, generally at a cheaper price and at a smaller cost to the bar, because we get things in at smaller rates, and it's not as a big industrial production as some big non-alcoholic products. There's some unfounded health claims. That's what Cara wrote.
Obviously, there's some talk around almost wellness in the non-alcoholic sector, which a lot of it isn't necessarily, as well researched. It's quite a fledgling category. So I think whether or not we can go out there saying that, like, these drinks are actively good for you as opposed to just not being bad for you, like alcohol is probably still sort of getting investigated.
And just with that, the choice that we have is very much a privilege, especially when you take into account the price. Not many people could afford a $50 bottle of water that's been distilled. So that's my point.
Okay, thank you for that rebuttal. Kind of a double team act there. Okay, we've got some stirring closing statements now to happen, and then we'll be done and we'll get your opinion. Has your mind changed at all? That it's going to be interesting to see. Rachael Niall, please take it away.
Okay, I'm going to go over what Matt was talking about in the opening statement, which is that this conversation is not only about spirits. It's what we're breaking down what a drink is and what a drink means to people, and that is its flavour, its ritual, and its story. And non-alcoholic spirits provide that. And we want to provide our customers with options. And no, we don't want a mocktail. We want quality alcohol alternatives. Cara's worried about marketing to people who may have substance abuse, but as I said, it is a choice. It's the same as someone who wants to buy a pack of cigarettes even though they've recently overcome an addiction to nicotine. We just need to be mindful of how we market and to whom. Charlie was concerned about climate change, and as Matt said, we're all concerned about climate change. Non-alcoholic drinks can be made sustainably like any other drink. And as I touched on before, non-alcoholic spirits give us the freedom to play with clarity, but it does also offer a new playground. Four Pillars has shown us that there's demand and a future for non-alcoholic drinks by releasing 2 non-alcoholic gins. And this is very admirable that my team member is now selling 2 non-alcoholic products. I've just opened an entire store full of non-alcoholic products. So I'm backing that there is a future in non-alcoholic spirits.
Yeah, round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you to the affirmative. Okay, and for the negative, Cara, I mean, you can sit down, you can go up, make your point if you like.
I reckon I can
You can do it there?
this one.
All right.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Mr. Speaker, my esteemed colleagues, thank you for an excellent combatants there. Now, Mr. Lehmann opened our arguments by asking, at what cost? He did it with much more kind of gravitas than me, but I would like to close by reiterating that. Now, my esteemed colleagues on the other team have really tried to co-opt the idea of flavour and ritual as being something that belongs to non-alcoholic spirits alone, and I just don't think that that's true. I think that any of us who have sat in a bar and enjoyed a non-alcoholic cocktail without those things have managed to experience all of that. Yes, non-alcoholic options are here to stay, but when it comes to spirits, at what cost? There's an environmental cost. The proliferation of products in this sector puts yet more pressure on strained resources and supply chains. With some consideration, instead of relying on these replicas as a shortcut, venues can employ local and seasonal ingredients, perhaps even manage to close the loop and reduce wastage in your own bars, as well as encouraging creativity among staff. Because letting them practice on non-alcoholic cocktails rather than when moving into spirits is always a good way to get them started. There's a financial cost. The marketing of many of these products is aimed at a premium price point, putting pressure on bars and retailers to reduce their usual profit margins to keep prices in line with consumer expectations. And there's an ethical cost. The lack of regulation around this rapidly growing industry leaves it vulnerable to less scrupulous operators than we obviously have in this room, who can do anything from claiming trumped-up health benefits to marketing towards vulnerable people. This is not what we mean by inclusivity. To this team, the costs are too high to justify, and we as an industry should be very careful in scrutinising this sector as it grows and develops.
And a round of applause for the negative. Thank you very much. Now I'd encourage you all to pull out your phones again, head to the app, to the QR code and cast your vote here. I'm not sure how does this work from now? How long is it going to take? Oh, okay.
Just a little observation, building on something Cara said.
We're back to the back and forth. This is what I love.
Oh, look, I think it's interesting, maybe for anyone who doesn't know. So, if you are an alcohol-producing brand, any form of marketing you do, even for your non-alcs, is subject to ABAC, the alcohol sort of advertising sort of self-regulatory body. It's a really interesting question: who is regulating non-alcoholic brands that have no foot in the alcohol category? That's a much more of a Wild West territory.
Should that be something that's regulated, do you think? I mean, I guess you guys are subject to it.
So I'll give you a very tangible example. There is a distance limit how close a Four Pillars ad can be near a school. Right. And that extends to a Four Pillars bandwagon ad. But as far as I'm aware, there is no distance limit to how far a beer ad could be if it was a non-alcoholic beer ad that was exclusively for a brand that only produced non-alcoholic beer. I'm not sure, but I suspect the ABAC code doesn't currently cover it.
That's interesting. How are we going there with the results?
I think we just got one or two questions.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
If you guys don't mind.
This is for the against. I find it quite refreshing, Charlie, that you brought up the environment since as you just flew over from Sydney.
Yeah, thanks for flying me down, Worksmith. I also missed my flight.
I was wondering what you'd be doing to offset your carbon.
And I'm going to fly back
today.
this afternoon. No, I'm staying. I'm going to invest money in your city.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Quite refreshing.
Thanks, Rob.
I'm kind of like split in the middle where I see so much benefit for people who can't drink for religious reasons or pregnancy, health, previous addiction, whatever. And I think that while we're kind of hung up on the on-premise, I think the value really is off-premise. But genuinely, I'd want to know, because I find like I agree with you, but like the language for non-alcs is so murky. And so close to kind of the old norm and the traditional alcohol side. But what do you see? Because this isn't going away. If anything, it's going to get bigger. So at this point, it's acceptance. What do you see, or how do you see a benefit of a language change, and what would you propose?
I think with the language change, it'd be the ABAC. So it'd come from a regulatory body within government. The other thing I'd really love to see, and on my bullshit fossil fuels and flying down here, would be major companies, especially mid-tier ones, I'd say, like Tanqueray is a major company, but Four Pillars, Archie Rose, coming together, working with the bars, local bars, taking their excess cut-offs, limes, lemons, fucking oranges, whatever, and developing a product out of that instead of importing, and then working out also a supply chain that it gets to us without all the marketing, without recycled glass. Think about every single step that it takes. Every single step is burning fossil fuels. Now, I know I flew down here on a plane, but if you look at I'm
Will
one
you be
person.
getting a boat back, Charlie?
I'll walk at this point. But I think there needs to be an overhaul of our whole industry to look at each and every step while creating. This isn't a brand new, 8 years these products have been in here. So it's not, steeped in history. We can change it. But we need to go from the very start, from start to finish. And how do we change and how do we limit that? Because, the next 10 years are very crucial. Like, if anyone read the UN report, we're fucked if we don't start changing now. And I know as individuals, we're told this all the time. It's 6 corporations that run the world. They're the one. But if we can start working with mid-tier corporations, changing in our local areas, changing in our cities, then we can have a look. And then with the language, then you go and tell the regulator, we're not called a spirit. We're a non-alcoholic beverage or whatever. We need to come to a consensus with that.
We do have some results in. I'm not sure if everyone can read the screen at the back, so I'll read it out for you. There was a future for non-alcoholic spirits. I believe we started with almost 80% agreed with that statement. 20% did not. Did today's debate change your stance? No was a whopping 74.5%. I don't think you really did that well then. And to 25%.
To be fair, I didn't change my own mind doing that.
I also agree. I didn't change my mind.
I think you may have had a harder topic to do there, but yeah. But yes, okay. Well, thank you, everyone. If there's not any more questions, is there any more questions? No? Okay, well, there's one up the back here.
So this is probably for 4, but where do you guys see non-alcoholics moving towards? I think when you look at what we're discussing today, it's largely centered around the way the culture interacts with non-alcoholics. But are we still trying to just encourage people to drink just with a substitution? Or is there actually a next step for non-alcoholics within Australian culture?
Who wants to go first?
I think it was for you guys, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just take a pick at the microphone. I'm obsessed with food. And in my world, in my palate, there's certain food that just tastes better with wine. And as I've grown up, I've started to really discover how much I love Japanese and Korean food with sake. And I've started just to get to the edge of understanding which sake I like and which I don't. I don't really know enough. I know enough to be dangerous and no more than that. I could absolutely foresee a future where cleverer people than me are making products that are being sold by people like Rachael that don't have alcohol in, but which do enhance your experience of food. I think the harder side of it is alcohol consumption without food, when it really is about fuel for that social occasion and how we build a culture that decouples the idea of socializing and having a great time with mates from the idea of getting pissed. I don't know. I don't entirely think it's a social negative. I think those of us who have a fortunate relationship with alcohol can have a couple of drinks. It lubricates. It means we can have better and more spirited conversations about the climate, and we walk away, a little bit fueled up, going, okay, we're going to change the world. But there are other people who have less fortunate relationships with alcohol, and I think we need to help them. So I think it's a complex and really good question, and I think part of it is about how drink goes with other flavour. And right now we have a culture that says, well, food tastes better with wine and pizza tastes better with beer, and you can't have a curry without beer. Could we de-alcoholize that? Maybe. And the other side is the social bit, which is a huge cultural question.
Very well answered. I can't add too much to that except to say that I guess for me as a sommelier, I think that most non-alcoholic wines, as in de-alcoholed wines, are rubbish. it's a really tough thing to try and find something that's delicious, that's de-alkalized, because a lot of the flavour and character and mouthfeel is actually stripped out. So I'm super excited about wine alternatives, and yes, they are marketed currently as non-alcoholic wines, but I think there's going to be a lot of growth around that area. And I do agree with Matt that I think it's still about social lubrication, it's still about occasion, and so people are going to make their own minds up as to whether they want a non-alcoholic beer specifically, if they want a de-alcoholized beer, or if they want something that is maybe it's a kombucha and it's not meant to replicate alcohol at all. But I think, the alternatives is going to be a really exciting space.
Is there a reason why the beer folks seem to be able to do this a little bit, I think, better? I think because some of it's pretty good.
I mean, Heaps Normal is a fantastic product, and there is always Heaps Normal in our house now. My wife's the beer drinker, and she generally drinks Heaps because she's got a mental allocation of how many units of alcohol she wants to have in a week, and she doesn't now need to sort of waste them on beer because Heaps does most of the job. It gives you that immediate sort of little adrenaline rush when you hear the spritz of the can open, the can's cold, the liquid's bubbly, it tastes good. I think spirits are harder, and then de-alcoholized and wine substitutes are harder still. So, I think beer is the first category to nail it, but maybe that also correlates to beer is the first category that has reached meaningful scale. And if we can get to meaningful scale, perhaps we can make more stuff locally that's better, that does a better job of substituting some of those effects, the acid and the tannin that we get from wine that goes with food. Maybe it just needs more people applying more seriousness to making world-class products in those spaces, and then they might be justifiable rather than utterly wasteful and indulgent.
4 Pillars is justifiable, trust me.
But then you were saying you have products like non, right? So it's like a wine alternative, but it's not made from grapes or anything. Well, not.
Yeah, if just in case no one's too sure, you've got de-alcoholized wines, and further to the pricing issue as well. So a de-alcoholized wine is made traditionally. So let's say it goes through the fermentation process. It's sitting at about 13%, and then there are a few different methods that you can use. There's a spinning cone method. There's also the evaporative or vacuum method that you can use that strips out the alcohol. So there's 2 processes, and the second process at the moment, the technology is actually it's new and it's very expensive. So that's why you're not going to get a non-alcoholic wine that's cheap as such. Then the other thing that we're looking at is wine alternatives like Non, who are absolutely the leader in that category. So they are using really high quality, usually organic fruits, spices, botanicals, and nothing that's fermented. So there's been maceration, there's been infusion, there's water for the infusion, but then there's no alcohol that needs to be stripped out because there was never alcohol to begin with. So in my mind, I think that those products have a lot more purity than some alternatives.
And is the problem with the stripping out of the alcohol? I'm going to ask you because you're the som too. Is it what's it taking away? Is it taking away body? What's that problem there?
Yeah, I think it mouthfeel. So, I mean, obviously, alcohol, it adds lift, right? Anything that you've got, whatever product, it adds a bit of lift and it adds a little bit of mouthfeel, adds a little bit of heat as well. So that is definitely something that gets stripped out. But for sure, I think, there's other little components like the tannin, which is mouthfeel as well, that gets stripped out. Aroma, I don't think I've come across many non-alcoholic wines where I'll smell it. I'm like, oh yeah, that definitely smells varietal, and that's definitely out of Adelaide Hills. I'm like, smells vaguely like a great product. Yeah, so it's I think the alternatives are really great.
Okay, now was that a question down the back, or did you want to say hi, Nick Cousins from Non?
Yep. from non. That's great. I'm glad I said good things. But the other... I've got ADHD. Does anyone else have that in this industry? I think there's quite a few of us. Okay, so the other thing I was going to say in regard to the price is that, as our non-friend was pointing out, there's nowhere to hide. If you don't have alcohol, and you've got to play, like really play around with those sort of balances with your acidity and your sugar and your tannin and your mouthfeel, all those different things. Like naturally, there is nowhere to hide. So you really do need to use like high quality ingredients. I think we're talking about earlier about beefeater and whatnot, and again, not that they're bad, they're just a little different. Like it's just like the costing it is different. So that's it. Thanks.
That's it. Okay, if we don't have any more questions...
Yeah, I'll wrap up. Thank you guys so much. I think that was really interesting, and it's probably actually the first time I've seen a debate where people actually knew what they were talking about. I debated as like a teenager, and you were given topics like, should maternity leave be universal? And you were like, as a 13-year-old. Anyway, so it was quite nice to see some experts up on the stage, and I really appreciate everyone coming. Thank you so much. We love hosting this every year.